Hi everyone, let's get started. So thank you for being here this late. Today I talk to you about a study we did on the ZWave protocol. So we wanted to study home automation protocols, and it turned around we looked at the ZWave protocol. So who here knows about the ZWave protocol already? Couple of you, okay. So it's okay, I will explain it anyway. So ZWave is a IoT protocol mostly used in home automation. It's based on a standard for the communication. One of its main characteristics is that it's low energy, so it's made to be used in battery-powered systems. And of course, to be able to work for months or even years without needing the user to change the battery. It has a range of about 50 meters, but it works as a mesh network. So if you have a building that is 300 meters long, you can use it, and each node will repeat the signal to the other one. Another big feature is the Autodiscovery. I will explain it in more detail a bit later. And it's a big part of why we were able to do what we did on the protocols. Since 2013, a new version of the protocol appeared, which is ZWave Plus, and it added mostly the secure mode. So a bit of difference between the unsecure and secure mode. The most notable one is the absence of ciphering in the unsecure mode. So in this unsecure mode, the security was mostly based on obscurity, because before 2017 the protocol was completely closed and proprietary. And its security was so based on a unique identifier, which is called the home ID, and is like the ESSID. So in the secure mode, so you have ciphered communications, but before 2013, no devices supported it. Between 2013 and 2017, some devices support it. It's up to the manufacturer to implement it. In what we observed, it was not implemented in a lot of devices. And since 2017, actually the 2nd of April of 2017, it's mandatory to implement it if you want your device to be certified. So in a lot of installations that are already working, the secure mode is not enabled in a lot of them. So yeah, it's not enabled in a lot of them. The user needs to do a special action to enable it, and to do so, of course, it has to be described in the user manual, which is sometimes not really well described. So we focused on the unsecure mode because we wanted to look more at the base of the protocol and not at how the secure mode was implemented. Some attacks have already been made on the implementation of the secure mode, for example, on door locks and such. So we wanted to focus on the insecure mode. A ZWave network has two kinds of devices. You have the controller, which can be a USB controller, or an all-integrated box for your home automation. And you have slave devices. So a slave device can be a LED bulb or a wall plug, but you have more advanced devices, like, for example, smoke sensors, or door locks, or even alarms. So you can have devices that start to touch to the security of people's or their homes. So here I have a picture in case you don't see clearly. Here I have the network I will try or attack later. So I have a Raspberry Pi with a controller on it. So the Raspberry Pi has a home automation software running. I have a door sensor. So this is typically placed on the top of the door to detect if it's open or not. And I have a LED bulb to simulate an alarm. I think that if I took 130 decibels, you would have just left when I just did this. So I took a LED bulb to simulate an alarm. Blinking, it rings, not blinking, no alarm. And on the attacker side, I have my laptop, so you can't see it here, but I have a small ZWave controller on one side, and on another side, a DVBT tuner, so originally used to watch TV, but I will explain why I use it a bit later. So in every exchange between two peripherals in ZWave, you have two informations that are always present. First, the home ID. So this is the identifier of the network. It's unique amongst every installation. And every device inside the same network use it to communicate, to know that they are part of the same network. And you have another information, which is a source and destination ID of the two nodes that are communicating. So the controller knows the home ID of the installation and publish it to the nodes when you include them. So the association or pairing is a mandatory steps to build your ZWave network. Basically, it requires a physical action of the node you want to include. So, for example, if you have a wall plug, you will have a button on it, which you will have maybe to press 3 times to put it in inclusion mode. For a light bulb, you don't have a button on it, so it will be a combination of on and off on the switch. Once it's in inclusion mode, and the controller is too, the slave device will send what's called a node information frame, and which contains a lot of things. So the basic device class will tell if it's a controller or a slave, and if it's battery powered or not. The generic device class will be mostly a broad indication of what is a device. For example, is it an alarm sensor, a binary switch, or an entry control? Next, you have the specific device class, which will be, as it says, more specific. So if you have an entry control, it will say if it's either a dual lock or an entry keypad dual lock. So you have a little bit more distinction. And then you have the command classes. So this is the exhaustive list of which commands the device will accept. So this is part of the auto-discovery, and when the controller receives it, it then knows exactly which device it is and what it can do. So it avoids the user to explicitly say, okay, I am adding, for example, a LED bulb. I can switch it on and off, and for example, I can also change the color. It does that automatically. So the association and pairing is the absolutely mandatory step to communicate, to make two devices communicate together. For example, if you haven't included your node in your network, the controller won't send any message to it. Sorry. So, for example, after having included a wall plug in your network, it will have the same home ID as the controller, and the node ID will be incremented as you add more nodes. So, in this case, for example, if I have only one node in my network, if I order my controller to send a switch off command to the node ID 3, it simply won't do anything. It's a firmware limitation. So, as I said, some work has already been done on the ZWave protocol, but those attacks are often complex because they require specific hardware, like SDRs. I will explain a bit later. And instructions to reproduce them are often not really precise, or you need a really well-controlled environment to do them. So we wanted to take a new approach, which is to avoid, at a maximum, avoid specific hardware and use exclusively certified peripherals. So peripherals certified by the ZWave Alliance are known to work extremely well with the ZWave protocol. And as I said at the beginning, we focused on the insecure mode because we wanted to do an attack that is as simple as possible and that focused on the foundation of the protocol. So speaking of foundation, the central point of every installation is its home ID because it's unique amongst every installation. It's set during the controller manufacturing. Depending on the controller, it can be randomly modified when you reset your controller or stays the same. And most importantly, you can choose the home ID you want to have. So there is no command to ask your controller, okay, I want this home ID, just use it. So two things we weren't really sure was, is it really unique, and can we really not edit it by hand? So the uniqueness, it's even if we think that the generation of home ID just turn around the probability to have the same of your neighbor is extremely low, so we took that for granted, and is it really not editable by hand? So in the hypothesis of if you wanted to attack a network, we first have to get the home ID. So to do so, we use classical spying methods, which makes use of SDR, so software-defined radio. Basically, there are peripherals who allows you to watch other radio frames at a very, very low level. So you have expensive ones, for example, like USRPs or the AKRF, more known. They range between a couple hundreds or a couple thousand euros, depending on the functionalities. And you have these little guys like this one right here, which are not really branded as SDR and are called DVBT Tuner. They are already generally used to watch TV, but they can work on the same frequency as the ZWave operates. So you can use them to just watch what's happening on ZWave. So here I have, for example, right here, I will maybe zoom a little, okay. So I will launch RTL SDR, which is a little software to be able to control the DVBT tuner and watch what's happening on the network. So if it's or not. Okay, so here, for example, I had a couple of frames. Okay, maybe a little less. Okay, so here we have, for example, a home ID. So it's already decoded here. As I said, we found it in the beginning of every frame. So we have it here, we have it on this one too. So getting the home ID is really easy. You only have to get a DVBT tuner, run a simple command, and you have it. So okay, yeah, screenshot. Then it would be nice if you could actually set the home ID in a real ZWave controller, because ZWave controllers are made to work exactly as intended with the ZWave network. So we looked a little bit in the different controllers we had, and one of them had a cool feature which is backup and restore. Because if you had configured, for example, 20 nodes and your controller just fries, repairing every node, for example, switches that are in your boards, every wall plugs, etc., and reconfiguring everything is a tedious process. So they implemented a backup and restore feature. When we looked at the backup archive, obviously you have the home ID in it. So it's a once complement of the home ID, but you have it in the archive. We simply tried to modify and restore it, and of course, we were able to choose our own home ID. But we had a little side effects. So it removed every node that had been registered in the controller, so we can't control any node again, but we have the home ID we chose. It's a tedious and long process. You have to do a backup, modify the archive, restore it, and you have to use a special software. So we had a more thorough look at what happened when we did the backup and restore operation. And especially we saw two commands. So you have two standing parts here. And in the first one that is displayed here, so it's part of a whole restore process. You see the home ID, so we tested it with a value deadbeef. So you have the home ID, and of course we also tried to just send those two commands to try to modify the home ID. So we are able to modify the home ID arbitrarily of our controller. It kept all registered nodes, simply because we didn't went through the reset procedure of the restore operation. It's simple and fast. You only need a shell and to enter two commands. And it doesn't require any specific software. But we haven't yet what we call a universal controller. Because if in my controller I had only, for example, the node ID 2 and 3, I would only be able to control the node ID 2 and 3 of my target network. But what if this network has the home ID, for example, 7 and 8? I won't be able to control them and even see them. So as a little reminder, you need to have nodes registered in your controller to be able to control them. But thanks to the Autodiscovery feature, you are not required to control the same node that you have included. So for example, you can include a wall plug. It will add a node ID, for example, the node ID 4. But when you restart your controller, it will ask every node ID it has in memory, and they will reply with a node information frame. So for example, if this node ID 4 becomes a LED bulb, it will know that, okay, I can switch in on and off, I can choose the brightness, change the color, and you will then be able to control the real peripheral that is now the node ID 4. So the only thing we had to do, which is a bit tedious, but you only have to do it once, is fill up our controller with a whole list of possible node IDs. So we took, in this case, a wall plug, add it, reset it, and did it. We did it only 50 times because the start time of the controller is longer when you have more nodes. So what it gives is this. I will switch to the real interface right here, zoom a little. So here we are on our controller. I already set the same home ID as the target network to save a little bit of time because it takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to start. So here we have all our nodes. So as I said, 50 nodes. And if we look, we see in this case one line here which says that we have a light dimmer switch recognized as the Aotech LED bulb. So it has been detected as a peripheral that is present in the target network. So that means that we can now control it. So I will try to do it. Hopefully it will work. So as you remember, when I just open the door sensor, it starts to blink the LED bulb. Now, if I select this one and be ready to ask it to switch off, so I open it, and hopefully it will not work, of course. So backup plan, I have a video. As I said, not a control environment, can be a little bit hazardous. So here's how it should have worked. So here we have the same installation, my attacker computer. We open the jaw sensor, the LED starts to blink, and when I press please switch off, it switches off. So didn't work in this particular case here, but should have worked as demonstrated here. So we were able to switch off the alarm, or the LED bulb in this case, but the door sensor is still open. So in a real case scenario, if we have, for example, an alarm and a door sensor that has the alarm to ring when you open the door, we will be able to open the door, as the alarm to switch off, or for example, have a more complex scenario, like asking the door to open, the door lock to open, inhibit the alarm ringing, and just leave the house without any trace of us entering it. So basically, the attack steps are at the number of 3. We have the listening part, which consists of getting the home ID of the target installation. So it's done with the DVBT Tuner. Then we only had to restore it in our own controller. Start our controller, let it do its work of scanning every possible node. So in this case, the 51st node. And we now add the control of the target network. So to sum up, we are able to create a universal controller. So if we add in the 232 nodes, we would be able to take over really any network. It's an innovative and simple attack because it only makes use of known hardware and simple hardware. A DVBT tuner used to watch TV, but with a simple script to transform it into a SDR. It's relatively low cost because a ZWave controller only costs about 30-35 euros, a DVBT tuner 15. So if you add a computer to run it, which could be a Raspberry Pi, you have a complete attack for under 100 euros. So here I'm done. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. if you want to ask them privately, I will be here after the presentation. So, thank you, everyone.